Tuesday's module video, you would have experienced two different intersection types and cycling through there. So the protected intersection that we have in Melbourne versus just a typical intersection. And this one did have a hook turn. Admittedly, example 2 wasn't a very busy environment, so it may not have given the full perspective of how it feels, conducting those hook turns, but at least it's a little bit of an example of two different intersection types. So hopefully you've had a chance to review those. Today's content, we will be discussing largely protected roundabouts. So before, on Tuesday, we were talking protected intersections. There's also this topic of protected roundabouts. We'll be looking similarly at the design, some international examples, and Melbourne protected roundabouts. So very, very similar to last module's themes. We'll look at some multi-lane roundabouts, which are fairly challenging to be able to adequately provide cycling facilities through there, but we'll look at what can be done and also jump into some local roundabouts as well. Ken, have we already got a question or?
Oh no, I was just saying whenever you want, I can show the street view of that.
Yeah, let's do it now before I get stuck into it. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll let you take the screen.
Yeah, I'm just grabbing it now. So yeah, you've got essentially T intersection there, and there's your bike head, and then the bike sort of store there. You press your own little bike button, and then it gives you the phase over there to go. So it's a neat little example. I mean, this is where the sort of the strategic cycling corridor sort of slices off, I suppose, at that point, and so it works quite well to get you out there. So I think something like that would be possible, maybe in combination, but again, you've got space there, don't you? You've got a lot more space here than Mark's example, so it would have to either eat into the footpath area or something. So it's a bit challenging. Anyway, there you go. Back to you, Max.
Okay. Now, if you are ever stuck within the roundabout space, there are specific guidance documents that focus solely on this issue. So there's a good one here from the Department of Transport in Victoria, guidance on bicycle and pedestrian treatments at roundabouts, and Austroads has also released their own bicycle safety at roundabouts. And I think that kind of speaks volumes, like when there's their own specific topic that Austroads and jurisdictions have, published its own guidelines on, generally should infer that these are high risk areas. And we'll get into a little bit more about that, why they are high risk areas for cyclists as well. Let's have a look at a protected roundabout. So here is an example of one, which this was an artistic rendition of the one completed in Melbourne. We will show some examples of this actually constructed, so down there on the ground, so you can have a look at what's working. But a few things to take away is cyclists are not within the circulating area, so they don't ride where general traffic are. They're taken off the road, or they're offset from that circulating area. And in the Melbourne example, they're actually crossing at raised points as well, which is a really, really big win, because that forces motorists to slow down, and it also raises cyclists, so they're a little bit easier to see because they're higher up. So there's lots of good benefits there. And this is an example where you've got the pedestrian crossing as well, so that's just running adjacent to the cyclist crossing point, and there's those two dedicated facilities. But we will look into this actually constructed, so I won't spend too much time on this particular image, so we'll hop into the detail later on. But before we do get stuck into details, if we have a look at this diagram here, so we've got multi-lane approach to this roundabout, and we can see we have 3 cyclists: cyclist A, cyclist B, cyclist C. And Ken, I might get you to launch a poll here, and we'll ask our participants which cyclists
sorry, Max, just looking at the South Australian example that was shared of the hook turn, which I think is even better. It's got a nice little protected little spot. But okay, let's get the poll up and running. Module 4, here we go.
So which cyclist do you believe is most at risk in this diagram? Cyclist A, cyclist B, cyclist C. We'll give you a few seconds to complete that one.
And you can move the poll window around if it's got in your way there. Just grab it and move it as you like.
We can see the results are starting to come through. We'll give you maybe 10 more seconds to answer that poll. So which cyclist is most at risk? Cyclist A, cyclist B, cyclist C.
Now, Max, while they're doing that, what colour cars do you see there?
I forgot my inability to decipher colours. So this one's blue, I would say.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Yeah?
Yeah.
That one's also blue.
No, that one's purple.
Okay, we'll call that one purple.
Good.
And then orange, yellow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the lingo down pat. That's good.
Okay.
Good.
I think for the participants last time we ran this, Max was referring to the blue car, which I think I was looking at the one that is blue, and Max was talking about the one that was purple, and I'm scratching my head. We're on the same page. All right, let's end that poll, and I'm going to display results.
All righty, so we've got majority saying cyclist B here, which is a valid argument considering the purple vehicle is already entering the roundabout there, and you can also see those lines there representing where that motorist is looking. So cyclist B is not quite within that line of sight. And if you also have a look at the yellow vehicle, because of the purple vehicle, the yellow vehicle cannot see cyclist B. So I think that's a very relevant point. Cyclist A was the next highest because, as kind of stipulated in this little diagram here, yellow is focused. This is the problem with this slide. All the sketches get a bit much very quickly, but the yellow motorist is looking, very much for oncoming traffic, and that's all they're focused on. They wouldn't necessarily be thinking to look straight ahead where cyclist A is, so that one's also at risk. And cyclist C, for that exact same reason, would be hidden by the purple vehicle. So let's just take for an example, if this purple motorist did see C and there's like, oh, slams on the brakes, the yellow vehicle may have noticed that the purple vehicle's already entered the roundabout and be like, I should be good to go, head straight out, and that would be a collision there as well. So the reason we've included this example is to show that there's no real one right answer. All cyclists within this environment are at risk of being struck by a motorist, and that's just one of the reasons that we try not to get these multi-lane arrangements where we've got cyclists in the circulating area as well, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. But yeah, this is a pretty good example of just the vulnerability that cyclists face within this space. If we have a look at this diagram, this is just showing the most common crash types that cyclists are facing within the roundabout. So the red arrows are motor vehicles, the green dotted arrows are cyclists. So the most common is actually an entering motorist versus the circulating cyclist. So a cyclist that's already in the roundabout and an entering motorist. And that's a real, example of looking but failing to see. So as the driver, we're trained to look for other vehicles in the roundabout, and smaller cyclists, they don't necessarily enter the psyche. So we're not trained to think, I need to look for them as well. And you can definitely see them, but you don't necessarily think I need to give way to them as well. And that's the outcome there. So that's why that one's coming out as high. Cycling crossing as pedestrians, so that's probably using a footpath or a splitter island median opening to cross over the carriageway. That's also quite a high one, 8%. Exiting motor vehicles versus circulating cyclists. So this one, I'm quite surprised, is only 9%. This one is anecdotally for me the most stressful. If I was cycling across multiple lanes and there was already a vehicle in the roundabout as well behind me, I'd be very concerned that they were not just going to exit and, you know, collide with me. So that's what I would perceive as the highest level. So it's interesting that statistics don't necessarily reflect this, but this is what the Austroads research has concluded. So there can be a little bit of a distinction there between what the perception of risk is versus where we're actually seeing the trauma occurring. But that's certainly one that I would flag as being one of concern. Side swipe within the roundabout itself. So yeah, motorists failing to maintain their lane within the roundabouts seems to be a fairly high one as well, but certainly the highest one that we are seeing is that first one, entering motorists versus circulating cyclists. So we did allude before about the protected roundabouts, and for some, when they think of a protected roundabouts, they think something that may look as, you know, far out and crazy as what this is. This is in the Netherlands, of course. This is called the Hovenring. So just to reiterate, a protected roundabout, it's not meant to be a grade separation. If you can do grade separation, or you can build something like this, that's awesome. However, that's not what a protected roundabout is. Here's another image of this particular feature. And this is so awesome because all these cyclists get their own, you know, complete grade separation. They don't need to interact with any of the motorists on ground or at ground level, and it's just, you've completely reduced the exposure of the crashes occurring. So it's a big win here, but this is not what we're going to be talking about today, because this is obviously a very specific type of project where you may require this type of investment. But for protected roundabouts, they look more something like this. So in our first slide that we showed, you can see that cyclists are not riding within the circulating area. That's given to general traffic. Instead, cyclists are kind of off-road or adjacent to the footpath in that type of area, and they're protected. And then they cross over, which is further past the circulating area. So that's probably the key takeaway there, is we're not getting cyclists to ride within the circulating area, because we know that motorists don't necessarily give way when there's a cyclist in the circulating area. And there's also the risk of those side swipe crashes that was produced in the previous diagram. So what we do have here is just an example of the plan level of how these are put together, but I'll show you the finer details. So this is a artistic rendition, a 3D example of the protected roundabout. Once again, we would use different design features. This is obviously a US jurisdictional paper, so ours would look a little bit different, but the principles remain the same. So if we have a look at item number 1, a bicycle crossing. So that is where obviously the cyclists have their own facility to cross the road here. The yield lines, so those are those shark teeth that were mentioned in the module 3 as well for the intersections. That's to demonstrate to motorists that they actually need to give way at these crossing points. So cyclists and pedestrians have the priority crossing there. You can see those yield lines there on that approach as well. The bicycle stop line or yield lines, item number 3. This one is actually a little bit confusing. I wouldn't recommend this one, because this is saying that both cyclists and general motorists kind of need to give way to each other. So this one's a little bit confusing. I'm not sure we would include that in our design. You would assign priority to one user or the other, and then let one road user take control of that crossing point. Not sure why they've prioritized both in that intersection. The curb radius, yeah, that's just for those that are interested in the detail, but yeah, just making sure that there's adequate provisions to slow down motorists as they are approaching the crossing point. The channelizing island as well, I wouldn't spend too much time thinking about this one. That's just some type of feature in between the pedestrian point and the cycling facility. Probably wouldn't include that in our jurisdictions, just because that could then be a tripping hazard in itself. So just something to be mindful of. And then the last point there is just our signage, just making sure that motorists are aware that this is a crossing point and that they're required to give way. So we would probably do a give way type of arrangement there. But we'll have a look at some international examples to see how this looks on the ground. And we'll first head to the Netherlands. So this is in Assen, but I'll check in with Ken to make sure I haven't glossed over anything.
No, you're doing really well, Max. There was just a point that came in about the difference between a radial and a tangential roundabout, and noting that a lot of these European examples are that radial roundabout with that sort of straight entry and then that turn, where we in Australia are often building those tangential ones. So just something for people to just have a look at as they're ticking through.
Very good point. Yes, if you are into that detailed space, that's a good pickup. But we've got this one here, which is in the Netherlands, as I mentioned, and you can see on the outside here we've got our cycle lanes that are basically off-road facilities, aren't they? And that is well and truly away from the roundabout itself, and you don't need to worry about entering the circulating area because you've got this beautiful facility that's well and truly well away from the roundabout. So how this works for a motorist, I might use a different color just so we can see, is if you're approaching the roundabout, you would be forced to give way at this point here for any pedestrians or cyclists crossing. Enter the roundabout, pause here as well to give way to general traffic. And we'll just say we're turning left in this example. You're then forced again to give way to vulnerable road users. And I can already feel some people who may be involved in congestion or working within the signal space or anything to do with throughput of traffic. This idea of having motorists having to slow and stop at all these different points may not be the best things for congestion. And in answer to that, I would agree. I think that's completely true. It's not the best thing for congestion, having motorists stopping at all these points. However, if you've got a cyclist priority route, if you've got a strategic cycling corridor, or you're just trying to improve cyclist safety at a roundabout, it may come at the expense of other road users. So if you are looking to get more cyclists on their bike and provide safer opportunities for them crossing at these roundabouts, then that may come at the expense of other road users. And that can be okay, as long as it's got a strategic objective and it matches, the given road environment and how that road functions. If it's a local environment, for instance, that can be a very good thing to be doing. So yes, I know it can stress people out when they see those continual stop-start movements, but there is also a reason that can be a beneficial thing. It can also push traffic onto other routes, such as arterials, where they have generally a higher expectation that they can travel quite freely through there. But if you're trying to prioritize cyclist movements, why not give them this opportunity? So this first example is one where we've got the crossing points relatively far set back from the circulating area. I've got another example where it's a little bit closer, and there's some pros and cons of that. But in this particular example, so I'll just draw here at this conflict point. This is once again, just as we were looking at with our protected intersection, where cyclists are crossing within the field of view of the motorists. So it's right in front of the motorist's windscreen, so they're very easy to spot. So this is a good example. And if if you can have a look at the envelope that's required there, it is relatively substantial. So in built up areas, it may be challenging to try and achieve this, but there are ways to reduce that footprint, which we'll look at in a couple slides time. But let's have a look at how this actually looks on the ground. So this image has been flipped just to make sure that we're driving on the left-hand side of the road, but here's how it actually looks. So you can imagine as a cyclist, and you wanted to cross over here, you'd be traveling along, just riding along in this direction and then following your path to travel around the roundabout. And motorists, it's a little bit difficult to see, but there should be some type of giveaway line marking or a sign in that area just to confirm that motorists are expected to yield. Although from memory, this example is one where there isn't such treatment, it's just embedded in the Dutch that they are expected to yield at these locations. So yeah, that's the Dutch for you, but we would certainly have some give way to cyclists and pedestrian signage just to confirm exactly how all that works. So as mentioned, this is one where the offset from the bicycle facility to the circulating area is reasonably far away. Got another example here where you can see that the cycling facility is basically adjacent to our circulating area. So cyclists are riding in this direction and the motorists are driving, right up against it, like this. Now there is another benefit in doing it this way. Not just that you've got a smaller footprint now, so you don't have to worry about taking up as much land, but the other benefit that you've got here is it's a lot smoother for a cyclist to be traveling in just one constant radius around the roundabout, as opposed to what was shown before, where you've got these kind of little awkward bends that have shown, which would really slow down cyclists, and then having to speed up and then slow down again, which can be uncomfortable. And when you've got those tight curves, you could also be pushing cyclists to just ride on the carriageway because they may not want to do that. They may just want to take the easiest route, which could be riding on the live carriageway. So there is a benefit to doing it this way. However, there's also something you'd need to consider if you were looking at protected intersections. I might just get rid of this one. And we'll get rid of that one as well. And I'll draw a left turning motorist here. Oh, that's the eraser, got the wrong button. Left turning motorist entering the leg there. And a cyclist that would be potentially already in the circulating area, riding around, crossing at that point there. So for that motorist that's shown in the blue there, I hope that color is blue there, Ken. I haven't got that wrong, but you could imagine if you were right there, to spot a cyclist that's going to be crossing in front of you, you need to be looking right back behind you. So very similar principles to what we were discussing with the intersection. It's just difficult to be able to spot cyclists when they're right at the back left of you. And where you don't have such a wide offset, those visibility or line of sight issues, they become increased. It might be easier to spot this down on ground level. So I'll just share the next slide. And conveniently, we have a cyclist here that's happy. So we can see the cyclist there that we'll just pretend is traveling outside of the screen towards that direction there where the bus is. And we'll just get a driver in. So he's, or they are heading into this roundabout and they want to turn off at this point here. If you could imagine you were within that vehicle or that Porsche, I don't know why I've used the Porsche, nothing against Porsche drivers, but if you were in that situation there and a cyclist, wanted to carry across their facility and through the roundabout, very difficult for the Porsche driver to be able to spot the cyclist there. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of appreciation where having the reduced offset from the cycle facility to the circulating area can create line of sight issues. So I'm not saying that you can never ever install these, and if you can't do a significant offset, then don't worry, don't do it at all, because there's still beautiful benefits with having these facilities. It's just something to consider if you were going through this as a project option. Ken.
Yeah, just a couple of comments that come in around, one being both sort of associated with the separators between the cycle path and the roadway there. And one note pointing out there that it's barrier curbing, which is good. And the other, just pointing out, I suppose, the difference between when you have that on-road cycle lane through a roundabout and how often it gets utilised by the motorists. So just complementing the general idea. And Max will keep showing some examples.
That's it. But yes, all for putting the separator there. Otherwise, you would just have motorists just trucking straight through the bicycle lane and using that as extra room to be able to get speed over the roundabout. So, yep, good pickup with the separators being used there, and the fact that they're barrier curb. Good eyes. Okay, this one is in the UK. It's Fendon Road roundabout, for those that are interested. A little bit of a mix between the first one that I showed and the second one. So you can see that it's still got the cyclist, you've still got this lovely one radius curve all the way along like this. So it's all circular, which just makes it more of an attractive facility. But you'll also see that there is an offset that's provided for motorists. And there's almost like a full car length, which is acting as a storage bay. So motorists would kind of travel, and then they've got an ability to leave the circulating area of the carriageway, pause, give way to cyclists and pedestrians, and then travel on through. So yeah, as I mentioned, this one's a type of amalgamation of both the options, and I think would work really, really well. However, you do need quite a bit of land to be able to do something like this. And yeah, it certainly looks good from a theoretical point of view, but whether cyclists would still find this route too circuitous and would just be cycling on straight through the roundabout, there would be a bit of info to collect there as part of your evaluation. But from a design perspective, this is a really good example of how to install these protected roundabouts. And I should have mentioned at the top of the slides here that there's no Wallies. So in case you've been straining your eyes looking for Wally, there's no Wally the Wombats in these slides, because we've got an assignment at the end of this module, not a quiz. So no Wallies, and apologies for those who've been looking. Let's have a look how this looks out on the ground. So this is a perfect example of what I was talking about, of the line of sight. So the motorist that's propped and waiting there, those cyclists and pedestrians crossing are right in front of the motorists. So it's very easy to be able to, see oncoming cyclists, stop, give way, and then pass through when it's safe. Once again, there may be a bit of concern if, you'd have lots and lots of traffic turning left or exiting one of those legs, and then there's a bank up of the circulating area, and you've got issues with those congestion risks as well. But once again, it comes back to what's your strategic intent of this project. If it's about prioritizing cycling connectivity and cyclist safety, then those may outweigh the objectives of congestion. And just from another argument, if you were looking at this purely from a safe system perspective, the alternative being cyclists using the circulating area of the carriageway, and if collisions do occur there, well, a collision with a cyclist is generally going to be higher severity. if you compare that to what is, being argued here, which is you may have an increase in congestion and maybe minor sideswipe or rear end crashes, the severity of those crash types are generally pretty low. So in terms of, if you look at the severity of the different options as well, it may also lead you to opting for a design that promotes a protected roundabout instead. There's something else to consider. Another way you could be suggesting that this is the one to do. Got a video here. Hopefully this plays. I've actually used this before in a slide, so let's see how it goes. I might just need to turn off my pen and I'll click. And this is a protected roundabout in the Netherlands actually being used. So have a focus on one of the legs, watch the cyclists crossing over, and there's plenty of cyclists to focus on. You see it's certainly not a quiet roundabout here. There's plenty of cars and plenty of cyclists, and just see how they're traveling around using this facility safely and not having to enter the general circulating area of the carriageway. Ken, is that popping up okay? Are you getting any lag?
Oh, looks good, Max. Yeah,
good.
Can certainly see that ticking along through. And while people watch that, I'll just mention Damo's pointed out TMR's looking at different roundabout design options. TMR actually has got this pretty cool roundabout design characteristics tool available. If you it's on TMR website, where you plug in lots of your variables and it tells you entering speeds and things like that. Not too many people know about that. So that's pretty good. And good to see the cycle lane is within the zebra crossing, so it's sort of all within that, and bidirectional, which is an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So this is maybe extra stress for motorists because they need to be looking both ways, and certainly wouldn't be a common type of thing in our jurisdictions, but this is
makes it a little more convenient for a cyclist as well if they don't have to.
That's right. Don't have to go the whole way around. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like that one we were looking at in Bendigo, wasn't it? Where how do you take bidirectional and join it with other bidirectional and around? Yeah, some pretty interesting stuff. That's good, but we'll be seeing some Australian examples soon, won't we?
That's correct. But before we do move on to that, I just wanted to show, similar to what I was discussing about the protected intersection, but where you've got pedestrians crossing over the cycle path, another example of let's just prioritize pedestrian crossings. So extending the zebra crossing all the way across the bicycle path as well, because I just feel that if cyclists are always given the priority within every space, pedestrians maybe, not paying attention to their phone or looking up at the birds in the sky or whatever it is, there's just a risk of conflict there. And I tend to side with let's get cyclists to slow down, give way to pedestrians, rather than let's hope that pedestrians are paying attention and giving way to cyclists. So just another point there to add, but it would depend on your specific environment. Okay, let's have a look at Melbourne. Good old Melbourne. So here we have a roundabout. This is an example of how things look beforehand. And I've got to say, this is a very, very common type of cycling treatments at roundabouts. It's not a multi-lane, so just single lane through the carriageway as well as on approach. But you'll see there's kind of bicycle lanes that are on approach. It's a little bit difficult to see. I think there's one there as well. And on departure. So the bicycle lanes have been kept all the way up to the roundabout. Sometimes you'd see bicycle lane just ends and then the roundabout starts, but this one, bicycle lane was kept all the way to the approach. And then cyclists are kind of encouraged to take the outer edge of the circulating area, which, as we saw, even in the protected roundabout design, even when as soon as you get closer and closer to the edge of the circulating area, your route just increasing the risk of those sightline constraints for an exiting motorists. So it doesn't really cater very well for cyclists to be riding in that peripheral part of the roundabout. If you were looking at low speed, if this was a low speed environment and you didn't have all the money for installing protected roundabouts, you could actually encourage cyclists to take the center of the lane, much less likely to be struck because they're basically just another motorist in the traffic lane, as opposed to pushing them right to the edges. But let's have a look at how things look today. So this is where our protected roundabout site has been installed. We've got a couple of them on the same route, and we will actually show this in the module for VR 360-degree video. So you'll get to see exactly how this looks on the ground, but this is what it looks like in plan view. And we've got this funny shape here. How many sides is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got an octagon. So it's a little bit unusual. Some cyclists really don't appreciate that they've got these relatively tight turns to make, as opposed to getting one nice radius bend. However, there's also lots and lots of awesome benefits here. What wasn't shown in the international examples that we do have here in Melbourne is that each of these legs are raised, which I alluded to at the start. And what that means is you're forcing motorists to slow down. So even if they're, purely focused on looking out for other motorists as they're entering the roundabout, or they're, looking at their GPS or their phones in their car or whatever it is, the fact that there's a raised feature means motorists will slow down, or they have to slow down because there's a big old hump in the middle of their road. And so this has a real benefit for cyclists crossing there, because if a collision should occur, they're going to be at lower speeds. So you've already helped reduce the kinetic energies involved in the collision. It's bringing it down to those survivable limits. So rather than being struck at, say, 30 kilometers or above, these should be at much lower speeds. And also given the turning radius and things like that, it's very likely that these are around the 20-kilometer mark. So that's also a really big win. I might just zoom in another example of how this roundabout actually looks. So just to give you an example how cyclists would use this, if I was traveling from the bottom of the screen and I wanted to turn right, I'm taken up somewhat off-road. I'm crossing these features where I have priority, so I don't need to worry about stopping and giving way to cars. And then I'm taken in that type of facility there. And I will pause here, Ken, and I'll ask the group if they can think of any disadvantages to this type of arrangement for cyclists. Talked about some beautiful benefits of this, providing the offset from the circulating area. It's all raised up, which is fantastic. But can anyone think of what would perhaps be a disadvantage of this type of arrangement for cyclists? And I'll give you a minute or so to formulate your ideas while I have a stretch.
Okay, we're seeing longer distance time. So if they're a keen cyclist, they might avoid it. Length of travel to turn right. Takes a bit longer to move through the roundabout. Lower travel speeds. Angle parking on the side roads. Sharp turns.
I think they're all spot on. Yeah, good point. Good pick up with the angled parking. That's a real concern for cyclists, as motorists tend just to keep heading out until they hear someone honk their horn, and not every cyclist has a bell and not every motorist would hear a bell. So that they are genuinely points of concern and hazards for cyclists. But the one in particular that I was alluding to was, yes, there is a longer journey to take turning right or traveling through the roundabout. So if this wasn't, or in the previous arrangement, a cyclist may have just been able to do that to turn right there. And on plan view, you're like, that doesn't look that much different. If you're actually cycling it, you do notice a difference. And even those, 10 meters or so that you may save, you can kind of get into the psyche of cyclists that, nah, I'm not riding 10 more meters. Why would I do that? So you could argue that's a disadvantage of this type of roundabout. And actually, we've got a photo here of this being done in practice. So rather than the cyclist, using the facility and the beautiful safety features of the protected roundabout, they're just traveling, where the general traffic would, and also without a helmet there, but at least they've got the retro-reflective backpack there. So hopefully that will improve their visibility. But yes, this is just an example that the cyclists are not being forced to use the protected roundabout. There's actually that option there to still use the roundabout if you feel comfortable doing so and you're confident, and you don't want to take the more circuitous routes. Ken?
Good point. A couple of comments came in around, sort of the diameter of the central island and vehicles' ability to straight line. And it kind of links with another point, which was around some practice in WA, often of putting traffic calming on the approach to roundabouts. And I mean, this kind of, if you traffic calm the approach to a roundabout to a degree, you've eliminated one or some of the needs for a large central island to get that big movement around, because that's really about slowing the vehicles down appropriately through the geometry of the roundabout. So the size of the circulating the central island in this, it doesn't concern me much at all because of the raised bits. Had there not been, then you might get a bit more of that fast movement through. Thanks, Max.
That's a good point. Might just draw that out for those that may not have understood that. But if there weren't the raised features, a motorist could kind of drive there relatively straight because the island isn't that big in the middle. So you could, pick up speed. But because those raised features are there, you're already forcing motorists to slow down. So that's a really good point, though. Good pickup. Got some detailed eyes on this. So just want to show you how things look on approach to these, to the protected roundabout. And you can see it's really just a stencil that's suggesting use bike lane at roundabout. That's not a That's not a regulatory device. It's not unlawful to ride kind of where you want to ride in the carriageway, if you felt comfortable in doing so. There is a road rule that stipulates that you're meant to use a cycling facility unless it's unsafe to do so. But once again, you may need to liaise with a barrister to determine exactly how that applies in this instance. But I just wanted to show you, even in this other approach where you've got these little separators adjacent to the parking lane, if you determined that, no, we don't want cyclists at all riding in the circulating area, then you could just theoretically extend your separators there all the way so that there's no opportunity to kind of pop out the circulating area. But that's this particular location. Ken?
There was just a couple of points on that. Sorry, I jumped in because you paused there. I thought we'd lost you, so I was coming to take over, but you're good there.
That happened to me on Tuesday, actually, when I was facilitating, but luckily we got through it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We'll hop into multi-lane roundabouts. So these ones are quite a tricky topic, and guidance has changed over the year exactly how to treat these types of environments. So let me get rid of that banner, just shift that up there to give me a bit more space to draw on. But if we have a look what's going on here, it looks quite good. It's an 80 kilometer per hour speed zone in this area. And there's a rail crossing down at the south end or the bottom end of this image, which is a little bit difficult to see, but that is just a little bit of site info for you. But these multi-lane crossings. So if we have a look, what's being provided on the right-hand side of the screen, it's actually an off-road facility for cyclists. So it's where the footpath would be, but there's no pedestrian activity here. So it's off-road. It's up on a, adjacent to the curb and channel. But what happens in this particular example is it gets ramped down onto the pavement level of the roundabout. And then cyclists have this tiny little edge of the circulating area, pavement marking, that's where they should be cycling. And then they continue off-road and continue there. There's no real facilities to cross over in this direction. And there's actually a sign there, which may make things hard, but there's no curb ramp or anything to cross there. So either they've assumed that there's no, desire for cyclists to travel in either that direction or that direction, and they're only traveling east-west there. But if you were to do that as a cyclist, you would potentially be forced to make this really, really awkward movement where you're then crossing over two live traffic lanes at a high speed environment where motorists may not expect that to happen at all, which should be raising some red flags and alarm bells with designers. Ken.
Mark's just noticed there that it's a metered roundabout, or it's signalised roundabout on one of the legs, which is a common thing. And then a great question: do cyclists have to stop at that metered point?
Do cyclists have to stop at that point? That is a good question. I'm going to say no. What do you reckon, Ken?
I reckon no as well.
Yeah.
Because they're essentially, unless that line continued over and there was a signal.
Yeah, unless there's a signal for the cyclist.
Yeah, so then, and that seems to be the debate now happening in the chat, because people are thinking, yes. If they're on road, definitely, yeah. But it's whether or not it's its own facility.
I'd suspect that the signals, like the way that it'd be written in the road rules, they apply to the carriageway, and because that's an off-road cycle path, it wouldn't apply to them. Yeah, but that's a good point.
Yeah, be easier, I think, to if we were on the ground there, it would be easier. But good point, yeah, excellent, good spotting there.
And here it is on the ground. So it's not for a congestion reason. It's actually just for the boom gates there.
Oh.
So okay. If that backed up a lot or whatever, as boom gates come down for the rail crossing, ramp, the signals there go on. And actually looking at that, because that is in front of the bicycle lane, I think I would probably stop.
Now we've got the group split.
Oh yeah, because it ramps down onto the carriageway at that point there. So,
but where's the hold line? The hold line's further back. All right,
You're right. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, geez. Might have to investigate this one further.
That wasn't the point of the discussion, but I'm happy that it's gone that way. But we wanted to just really focus on how, if you could imagine how stressful that would be as a cyclist in that situation, cycling across two lanes. Your ability as a cyclist to see oncoming traffic is pretty difficult, the right-hand side of you, and just general traffic wouldn't expect that movement to occur. So this type of arrangement is not considered best practice. It's just an actual example of what's out there. I will go to another example here. This one's in Canberra, and we have a different type of arrangement here, one that we would instead recommend, but it's an on-road cycling facility. This is a lower speed zone, it's 60 kilometers per hour, but you can see that the general layout looks very similar to what we had previously. And cyclists are going from on-road to off-road. So the previous example was the other way around. Cyclists had off-road and then they went on-road as they approached the roundabout. This is flipping that already. So I'm already much more impressed. And cyclists are taken off-road and away from the circulating area. And this is a spot where they actually pause. There's a little hold rail. So cyclists are forced to stop and give way to any motorists, and they pause and then they cross over when it's safe to do so. Similarly, if they wanted to turn right, they have to stop and pause, give way to any motorists within the roundabout, and cross when it is safe to do so. And there's also those areas in the middle where they could theoretically pause and take that in separate phases as well. So it's not just one gunning it across. And for high-speed environments, multi-lane, this is the one I'd be going for, because you don't want to just let cyclists, turning right across multiple lanes and hope that motorists behind them see them and that they do give way, or because it's just an awkward point where it's really not clear who would have priority. So this is a much better example here. Ken, you've got a little smirk on your face.
Sorry, I'm looking at I was looking at the other one. I got obsessed with that hold line and cyclists. And so I'm in the street view of it and still unclear what you'd have to do. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
I like it when we get these challenging examples. This will keep Ken up. You watch.
Well, I know the site quite well. I was in the region when it was being planned and designed. So anyway, keep going.
This is how it looks down on the ground in Canberra here. So you can see cyclists taken off road there, and they've just got a much better place to be able to cross the road. And for those concerned about the time taken for cyclists to then pause and give way, yes, it will take cyclists longer to travel through that roundabout because of that design decision. However, it's at the you've got to weigh up where your priorities kind of lie, and you'd hope that safety is much more important than the few seconds that it takes for cyclists to travel through there. And in a similar vein to what was shown at the protected roundabout, for those cyclists that are, maybe they're training cyclists, they're doing this as a means of exercise or competition or whatever it is, they still have the ability just to cycle straight through in the circulating area. So they still can make that decision. However, for those that don't want to do that, they're not being forced into that position. So that's why I like these designs much more, because you're accommodating for different levels of cyclists. It's not just every cyclist has to ride, travel as the vehicles would, and good luck, because that would be very stressful for most people. For those that have worked within this space before, Austroad's Guide to Road Design 4B may have seen this diagram, which was the first example that I showed. That's how this was probably originally designed. This has been superseded. So this no longer exists. So we're no longer recommending that cyclists, we push them to the outside edge of circulating areas in multi-lane roundabouts because of those risks that have been mentioned. So if you have seen that before, we no longer use that as a reference. Instead, we want to bring cyclists off-road, and we want to be crossing them at particular points that are away from the circulating area of the roundabout. I like this mocked up version of how this multi-lane roundabout could work with cyclists. For those that are particularly eagle-eyed, you may have noticed that the north and south legs, that's where cyclists actually have priority. So you could imagine maybe those are local streets. They may not have a high function for getting movement of traffic. And that's where we've said, let's give cyclists the priority, and they can cross over and motorists are required to slow and give way. So they've been raised up and give way signs have been installed. The east-west legs, however, have the opposite function. So you could imagine maybe the east-west link is a motorway or a very high-speed environment, 80, 90 kilometers per hour. And that's where we're saying, no, cyclists don't have the priority crossing here. It's more important the throughput of traffic, general traffic, or it could be a heavy vehicle route where maybe you've got issues with actually raising a platform there or the like. And so in the east-west leg, you've got priority given to general traffic movements. And it just loops back to what I've been stating, but just determining the strategic functions of your environment, where cyclists should or ideally would be having priority, and where the traffic route may have priority, and just making sure that that aligns with your design intentions as well. So yeah, I really like this philosophy where it's, and you could also argue that isn't it better to have consistency across all the legs? Yeah, that's could be a reasonable argument, but I think cyclists would intuitively understand why they may have priority across a minor leg and not priority across a major motorway. So I think that could also be argued from that standpoint. Ken, before I hop into local roundabouts, anything you want me to chat on, or are we all good in the chat?
Sorry, just struggling to hit my buttons there. Just pointing out some sort of the narrowness. I mean, this is a bit of a mock-up, really, isn't it? So narrowness of the park lanes and those sort of things. Yeah, and then I suppose just a bit of interest around some legs having priority and some not, and how that might play out exactly as you had mentioned. So yeah, good. Let's keep going.
I'll keep cracking through because there's a few more slides I want to get through, and we'll have a chat about our local roundabouts. And this is the last one. What's wrong with this photo? So also bonus prize if anyone actually knows where this is, but I'll get rid of that confused cyclist there. So any ideas what would be wrong with this photo, or what do you consider a risk in this photo?
Okay, so we're approaching a roundabout.
Yep, bicycle lane on the other side as well.
Yep. Okay, a few things coming in. Yes, I certainly know it where it is. I've stayed at that hotel directly over the other side of the roundabout there, and sat watching the roundabout for many hours.
There you go.
Most people relax watching TV or something. Relaxing watching the roundabout operate. Because it's a very interesting roundabout, that one. Not just for what we're talking about now, but it's a peanut roundabout.
When Ken books the accommodation, it says, do you want a room with the view? Everyone assumes it's the sea view or the mountain view. He's like, no, just the roundabout, thank you.
It is a peanut roundabout, that one. Okay, we're seeing nowhere for bikes, cycling lane ends, cyclists pushed into traffic. It's a forced merge. Dooring coming in there as a possibility on the other side. Lots of people not liking that force, giving up. Good luck. People then starting to look at ways it can be solved, like potentially sharrows.
Already looking at the answers. I like that. I might just move on there, but I definitely agree with the bicycle lane just ending and forcing that merge is certainly a concern there. And it is a very, very common arrangement. In fact, sometimes you don't even see bicycle end, it just ends. So it's a very common arrangement. Did we get any answers for where it was there, Ken? Or
no, nobody seems to say that. Another one pointed out there was the parking sign just on the left there, near that there, and what the implications of that would be, and whether how it would be if there was parking there, and yeah.
Good pickups. Yeah. So the first one that said the merging cyclists, though, we might give a prize out there, Ken, just because I know we've got a few spare from this course, so we'll keep going. But this one was in Launceston, for those that are interested. Alphen Road, Brisbane Street, Lawrence Street, and it is a peanut roundabout. So it's a bit of a curious design, but certainly not well designed for our cycling community, unfortunately. But it is also a very common approach to design. We already got a bit of a sneak peek as to what could be installed instead of just ending the bicycle lane. And here we've got, the bicycle lane there, but you can see there's a sharrow there as well. So that's a means of communicating that cyclists share the road now, and help to give cyclists confidence to ride in the center of the lane as opposed to just, skirting along the curve and channel. So it is really appropriate in local streets, low speed environments. Wouldn't really be recommending for that if you've got arterials or anything like that, or lots of volumes of traffic. But the showers approach is certainly very, very common in local roundabouts there. Another really good best practice tip is if you have, some form of vertical deflection or a speed hump or, speed cushion, something that slows down motorists is also a big win. This could be improved further by, let's put this vertical deflection prior to the merge point. So motorists are slowing down prior to the cyclists coming in and merging or taking the lane. So it's a really good thing to be doing, but it can be improved by bringing that further back and before that merge occurs. Sorry, Ken, you got anything to add there?
That's good. It's good, Max, and actually linking with some of the chat that's going on behind the scenes. But I just did realise maybe some people don't know what a peanut roundabout is. We were using the term, so I thought I'd quickly just show it. I know I'm stealing your time, Max.
That's all good.
But that's the one. So that photo was taken on that leg coming up there. But a peanut roundabout is just one with sort of trying to elongate it out to link up a few different legs. Some dog bone roundabouts as well, a bit longer, so sort of halfway between a peanut and a dog bone, that one. Anyway, that was it. So just to keep everybody on the same page there.
And did you know that I can't actually visit peanut roundabouts, Ken, because I'm allergic? Anyway, I got to keep going before I... Has that shared again? Sorry, Ken?
Yeah,
great. Just another example there of the sharrows in place. And once again, we've got the vertical deflection occurring, but would be better to be occurring after the merge point. Another example of that just going kind of across the carriageway. Got a few slides here at the end, which are just highlighting some cycling advertising campaigns that I've seen over the years that I thought were worth sharing, because while we've talked a lot about infrastructure, improving attitudes towards cycling as well has a really important role within society as well. So it's not just about infrastructure, but general community understanding how vulnerable cyclists are. And I think this is well illustrated in this Californian advert here. Another one that you may have seen trending, it was a couple of years ago, but this idea of a red cup project. Basically, cyclists all over the world, they went to their local on-road bicycle lanes and they dropped these red cups on the edge of the bicycle lane. And then they uploaded it to Twitter or whatever it was with the hashtag Red Cup Project. And they recorded how long it took before the red cups got flattened, which was usually 10 minutes or something like that, just to show once again how frequent it is for motorists to veer into a bicycle lane, and also communicates how vulnerable cyclists are within that space. Tomatoes were also used within the cups itself to make it a little bit more, I suppose, graphic, but that was one that really hit off and it went kind of global and was a very high trending article on Twitter. This one's probably my favorite one. I love sharing this one. This one's in New York, and some bloke who traveled along this route every day to commute into work was fed up with the council not installing protected bicycle lanes. So he went to his local hardware store, bought 50 plungers and just glued them onto the road. So he built his own just to give himself a bit more a bit more protection. This guy is just really very proactive about his safety and thinking about, you know, what would be best for his route into work in the morning. And just amazing that they went to that effort. Unfortunately, they did not last. The council ripped them up that same day in the afternoon, and it didn't result in the council then installing a protected bicycle lane, but it did make the headlines of a few cycling journals and the like, and yeah, got to admire that dedication, I guess. There's another one I won't play here, but this was an ad that was run in Scotland, and it's called See Cyclists Think Horse. So I'd just encourage you in your free time over lunch today, just click on the link and have a view. It's worth a watch. But unfortunately, this one did get taken off the air in relatively quick timing. I think it was only a matter of 6 months or so, because this lady is not wearing a helmet. It's not a legal requirement to wear helmets in the UK, but the public was still upset that was an image being displayed. So you can kind of understand that. But also people were upset that the cyclist wasn't riding close enough to that lovely cobbled curve and channel. They expected her to be riding closer to that, and just caused a bit of an upset to the general public. So that got drafted out of the ads. But anyway, have a look at that if you're in your spare time. It's worth a few. Nice to see what other jurisdictions are doing out there to help promote safer cycling. As this is our last module, we won't get to review this in a further module. So we'll just have a quick chat about the different types of examples that we're showing for roundabout design. So I know it says that there's only 2 examples, but I'd strongly encourage you to watch the entire VR 360 degree module 4 recording, because there's a little surprise at the end. So hopefully that's giving you a bit of incentive to watch all the way to the end. It's a bit of a longer video. I think it's about 10 minutes or so. But anyway, first example, you'll get to see what it feels like riding across Melbourne's protected roundabout. And the second example is those, traditional approaches, which is just getting cyclists on the periphery of a roundabout. And in this example, I was actually riding and doing a right turn here. And I'd encourage you, if you are viewing this, to have a look behind you and watch the oncoming vehicle. And this is why I said that this is the most stressful point for me as a cyclist, and that's my own perception of risk and not necessarily where the trauma is occurring, but it's very concerning as a cyclist riding and hoping that the vehicle gives way to you as you're commencing that right turn. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop the presentation and instead hop into Moodle, and I'll go through our final assignments. Did you want me to pause there for a second, Ken?
No, keep going. Yep.
Beautiful. So module 4, so that's the VR 360 degree video that I talked about. Watch that. That's awesome. All the way to the end. Module 4 assignment. We click on this guy here. Word document. I've already got the Word document open, so I'm just going to open that up and share that over here. And we'll go through exactly what's for module 4. So first thing you need to do is you need to select a site that has existing cycling facilities. That could be an on-road bicycle lane, it could be a shared path, protected cycle lane, whatever you've got, whatever's convenient for you to access. So you could be close to your home, close to work, close to the grocery store. Not too fussed exactly what that facility looks like, but it has to have existing cycling facilities. We'll get you to actually visit the site. We want you to actually go out there, take a look at the site, see how it's operating, make any notes, and yeah, we just want to get you that perspective. If you've got a bike and you feel comfortable cycling it as well, that's awesome, but not a prerequisite. Then we've got some questions below, which we want you to answer. And we actually encourage participants to answer the questions in any format that suits yourself. So you can just write a Word document and jot down some dot points or a paragraph or so and answer the questions. In the past, we've had people make TikToks or videos of their assignments. We've had a comic strip, which was very entertaining. PowerPoint presentations. We've had advert posters to try and advocate to state government or local council and things like that. So we've had some really creative submissions, and we like to encourage that creativity. So whatever works for you, whatever you want to do, we're happy with that. We like to see what participants can get out there. But the questions that we're going to get you to answer: what infrastructure currently exists? So you should have a fairly good idea of what's already out there, and have a look at the previous modules for the exact terminology, but we'll get you to answer that question. What are the hazards for cyclists? So that might need to think of a bit more risk assessment view, and if you've done any auditing or anything like that, jot down some hazards that exist there for cyclists. And the final question is where we want you to get particularly creative, but imagine you're designing a facility there and you want to improve cyclist safety. What could be installed to better improve safety for cyclists? So those are the three questions. We'll get you to upload this Word document. So we'll get you to insert your name, insert the Google Map link to the site locations, just so we can have a look around exactly the site you've picked and see how it all looks. And then you can upload the assignment just to Moodle. For those that have already uploaded module 2 assignment, it's the exact same format. So you can just click on upload file, drop it in there. We'll get an email notification saying that you've submitted your assignment and we'll review it. We've allowed for a couple of weeks, so Monday the 28th of February, which coincidentally is my birthday, is when assignments are due. If your file sizes are too large and Moodle isn't having a bar of it, then please just send it via email. You can send it to our training email that you would have got emails from, or if you've got my email address, hopefully you can source that from the module 1, but feel free to send it via email. But first point, if you could try it at Moodle, if it's too big, that's fine. We can do it by email. If it's still too big, we can look at uploading it via the cloud and things like that. But we want you to have a bit of fun with this. It should take, I would say allow 2 hours to get the whole module done, including the site inspection. We don't want you to spend days and days on it, or we're not expecting a thesis at the end of this. We just want to make sure you've got those fundamental concepts down pat. You can explain what cycling facilities are present. You can acknowledge where the hazards are, and you can recommend something that would improve cyclist safety. So it's meant to be as high level and somewhat as easy as that. So we don't want you to spend too much time on it. We're going to provide this document here to you as well, which is a library of 360-degree cycling footage. So if ever in the future you're thinking, I want to build a bi-directional protected bicycle lane, but I can't really envisage how that would look out on the ground. Well, we've given you these examples here of, what a bi-directional lane could look. You can click on it. I might just open that up as well. Let's see what happens. And it will take you to a link. And just as we had, before with all the module examples, this will just give you a 360-degree footage of that in place. and you can scroll around and use that as actual examples of it being installed. We've also included these little emojis, which is just to suggest how good that is at achieving the goals. So best practice could be improved. Poor safety, and this one, last one, if you see that screaming figure, that's don't do that. So maybe you're interested in just seeing what the don't do that ones are. So the multi-lane roundabout at a signalized busy CBD environment, that's a real don't do that environment. So even if you want to just click on the ones that are, a little bit, not best practice, that's also okay. But yeah, we've just got these different themes here: shared paths, on-road facilities, providing at roundabouts and intersections, etc. So we'll give you this as a library that you can then, reference going forward in your projects. You can always just click on them. If you want other examples that that you're interested in, just feel free to flick us an email. I'm sure we've got footage of that, and we can, happy to share all the information we have, because at the end of the day, what we want to do is just get improved cycling infrastructure out there and make sure all participants feel comfortable with what they're designing. And we're happy to be used as a sounding board going forward. So please do save our contact details and get in touch if you are working within this space. But it's been a real pleasure. I love running this course. It's awesome to see that we've had such a strong level of engagement and lots of chat going through, and really looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with for the Module 4 assignments. And if you do have any issues or you can't think of anything, please do get in touch. But Ken, any final thoughts?
Yeah, so that sheet's been uploaded to the resources in Moodle. We may send it out as well, just because I think it's valuable and it's fun, and it's something others can have a look at, different facilities. So thanks for that. Yeah, finish off those quizzes, assignments, and then your certificate will become available once you've finished everything. It's all completed and you've filled a little feedback form. I just want to thank Max for all the work and passion he puts into this. He really just loves sharing that information, putting the content together, tweaking it and updating it. If you have any suggestions on further updates or examples you think we should include, we'd love to hear of those. And thank you for getting involved. I know you're all busy, and we think it's wonderful that you're taking time to try to continue to improve safety of cyclists. Thank you. See you at the next course.
I forgot to mention that certificate at the end. So it's right at the end of the Moodle. You actually have to have completed all the coursework, and then once you've done that and the feedback form, then you'll get a link that says, I can get my certificate. So it's only once you've done all the work prior and you've got the adequate coursework scores that you'll get the link for your certificate. But absolute pleasure. Hope you all have a lovely day, lovely weekend, and yes, look forward to seeing the modules.
And you'll also get your certificate in the mail with any prizes you won along the way.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Happy cycling.